We're going to begin with the meeting. So the Saudi defense minister, alongside a very senior delegation, they went to Iran. They're going to Iran amidst a very tense climate. Now, there were talks about, Donald Trump preparing to attack, and to the media, he was saying that, yeah, if they're not going to agree to a deal, we're going to bomb them. Bombs will be landing. But at the end of the day, he did not really do much. He also said recently that, we prefer to reach an agreement with Iran rather than having a war with them, especially after Benjamin Netanyahu was threatening to go and attack the nuclear facilities, and more requests coming from Israel to attack the Iranian nuclear facilities. Now, let's begin with this video here. There was a video that was published after or about the meeting that took place between the Saudi foreign minister and the senior figures inside of Iran.
سعيد بلقائك، كيف حالك؟ سعيد بلقائك. لا نعرف هذا الشخص. كيف حالك؟ كيف حالك؟ نحن لدينا علاقة خاصة. السلام السنة السعودية في اليمن ومحمد الجابر. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله. شرفنا.
So, very senior meeting between the Saudi defense minister and the top figures inside of Iran. It wasn't just the IRGC, and again, the IRGC is the most important armed group inside of Iran. Iran has, you can call it, two armies, the Revolutionary Guards Corps and the Iranian army. And he met with, of course, the top figure in the IRGC. He also met with Masoud Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, and he also met with the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei. These meetings are very important and very symbolic. And the fact that the defense minister went and met with the supreme leader of Iran, that bears a lot of significance. It's a lot of importance, especially when it comes to a certain figure in another country that is not the most senior in that country, in the form of the defense minister, meeting with the supreme leader. Now, what did they talk about, and what did it include, and where is this all coming from? Well, to contextualize the warming up of the ties, or getting closer, the relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia isn't something that started today. This started to take big steps, especially from China. China started to take big steps in trying to get both Saudi Arabia and Iran together, especially with their massive success in 2023 when they mediated with the help of Oman to get the Iranians and the Saudis together. And after several talks, both sides sat down and they decided that they will start having relations again after 7 years of very tense periods, especially after the war in Yemen, and also the different approaches and different sides that each country takes in relation to regional tensions and regional political affairs and certain groups that each side might sponsor. So there has been some backing to it. Also, last year, there were drills taking place between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And both countries started to have more and more comments that are indicating that, well, they are actually coming closer together after all of these years of tensions. Now, with China's position, China is taking a position of, well, bringing these countries in the region together rather than push them to fight against each other. Of course, this might sound childish, but there are certain figures in these countries who fall for the pressure, especially external pressure. But the more time went by, the more, well, the Saudi government, the Saudi establishment, they realized that, well, the United States isn't really as it's portraying itself. The United States tries to always use leverage against Saudi Arabia with the protection, showing as, Iran is a constant threat. Iran is the threat to the Arab world. Iran is the threat to all of the countries around it. And Iran has taken certain positions previously that might be translated as such, but other countries did too. However, the United States and Israel were relying on getting Saudi Arabia to their alliance against Iran. And they did not want any of the Arab and Muslim countries to come closer together, because that's part of the strategy. That's part of the strategy of the colonial powers. And Israel is the final colonial state planted there and sponsored now by the United States administration. What did they talk about? They spoke about many subjects, and the defense minister carried out a direct message handwritten by the Saudi king to the supreme leader. So the message that came in this photo was actually a message coming from the Saudi king to the Iranian supreme leader. And the talks were about the fact that we are brothers in general, the reports about these talks, that we are brothers, we don't need any external and foreign interventions. We are stronger when we are together, and we need to coordinate on all levels. And reports that the Saudis came with requests to coordinate on all levels. And when we talk about the Saudi and Iranian coordination, this is beyond Saudi Arabia and Iran. This stretches to Lebanon, this stretches to Syria, this stretches to Iraq, this stretches to Palestine, Egypt, other countries too, because Saudi Arabia and Iran are considered to be the most significant players in the region. Saudi Arabia started to lose this position the more the establishment was more aligned with the United States. But with recent years and recent changes that were happening in Saudi Arabia, clearly there has been a shift, and that shift is being reflected with that meeting with Iran, because the meeting itself resembles a lot. The meeting itself is very symbolic. The people or the countries who want Saudi Arabia to be aligned directly with Israel and the United States, they don't want to see Iran included. They don't want to see these leaders sitting with the Iranian leadership. But clearly, some in the Saudi establishment are realizing that the future is, well, going to see a multipolar world. It's not going to see the United States calling all of the shots. Saudi Arabia and Iran joined the BRICS. They are increasing their ties not only together, but also with international countries. And they are forming stronger bonds together that stretch from security to economy to strategy to foreign coordination, all sorts of things. And this coordination would be very, very important. It would be a game changer for the region, because the United States always relied on the frictions between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And unfortunately, there were many sides who were pushing to further divide the countries of the region between themselves. However, there is a shift. Now, some people are saying Saudi Arabia went and tried to reassure Iran that we will not be participating and we will not be supporting any attack coming from the United States potentially or Israel against you. Now, that argument is quite weak because it might have included this, but this isn't something new. Saudi Arabia, from over a decade ago, they reassured Iran that we won't be participating in anything because they know Iran's capabilities and they also know their vulnerabilities, and they did not want to be part of this. However, these talks stretched beyond that, and also there were reports now that Donald Trump actually applied pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu not to attack Iran. It was reported in the New York Times that Donald Trump waved off Israeli strike after divisions emerged in his administration. Israel developed plans for attacking Iranian nuclear facilities that would have required US assistance, but some administration officials had doubts. This is officially coming out now that Donald Trump stopped them from attacking the nuclear facilities in Iran, in line with the previous administration's position, preventing Israel from attacking nuclear facilities. So when Joe Biden was there too, they had similar communication coming from the administration, and Trump clearly said that to Netanyahu. This led to a very large debate inside of Israel. The debate was around, well, basically, we don't want to open a front against Donald Trump, and this statement from Donald Trump, we have to basically consider everything to do with it before we take any action, because the United States, well, they are the biggest supporter of Israel. Israel relies on them heavily. They have been supporting them all along. But in Israel, no, they're saying don't rush, and don't open a front against Donald Trump. Now, the opposition in Israel is saying that, well, no, we shouldn't submit to the pressure of Donald Trump, and we should attack Iran, regardless of the position of the United States of America. However, this is proving that, well, the talks between Iran and Saudi Arabia, they weren't only talks about Saudi Arabia trying to reassure Iran that the United States, we're not going to support them and we're not going to support Israel with any potential attacks. And they, of course, spoke about economic developments. They spoke about Lebanon, about Syria, all of these things, because there are plans, including economic plans and energy plans to do with exportation from the region to Europe too, with all of the changes. And both countries, if they coordinate, they make it easier for everyone. But there was something very significant that was said and that was reported by Israel, that they did. It's not only that they didn't just, talk about this coordination. Actually, the Saudi foreign minister made a very significant statement. And that statement was in relation to Israel. And this was reported in the Israeli website, Ynet, that is a major website, and that belongs to one of the biggest newspapers in Israel. According to them, the Saudi foreign minister said, the Islamic world must unite against the occupation and the Zionist entity. That's a statement that is very significant coming from a Saudi official. Again, this report only came from Ynet, inside of Israel. They also quoted some statements coming, of course, from the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council in Iran, saying that Iran and Saudi Arabia are two important large countries. Strategic cooperation between them will bring security and progress in this sensitive region. We are ready for cooperation at all levels, including joint investment. And then they finalized it with the Saudi defense minister said, according to this report, the leaders are determined to establish friendly relations at all levels. The Islamic world must act in a coordinated and united manner against the occupation and expansion of the leaders of the Zionist entity. This is a very significant development coming from Saudi Arabia. So the most intense statements that came from Saudi Arabia came in the form of refusal towards Israel's, of course, actions. I mean, officially they were against what Israel's doing in Gaza, but there were no significant actions like being taken or visible from Saudi Arabia that were enough to apply significant pressure on Israel. There was a statement after Benjamin Netanyahu proposed that some Palestinians might be displaced or should be displaced to Saudi Arabia. Then there were severe statements coming from some Saudi officials. But according to this report, if the Saudi defense minister is calling for a joint cooperation against the Zionist entity, not Israel, when he was in Iran, when he's sitting with the Iranian officials, this is something very dramatic. This is not something that is, to be taken lightly whatsoever. And him meeting with the IRGC and this being the most senior figure coming from Saudi Arabia to Iran. So the talks weren't just about Saudi Arabia trying to reassure Iran and tell them, look, we're not going to support an attack against you. No, there was coordination on all levels, and there were statements about this coordination on all levels. And according to that report in Israel, there was a significant threat against the state of Israel.